Utah football continues to add talented players through the transfer portal and through recruiting. We're talking about what they will bring to the team in the short term and long term on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. And on today's show, we're talking all things additions to the Utah football team, and then we'll close at the very end with a little thing on Utah softball. Congratulations to Utah softball for winning the first ever Pac-12 softball tournament. Truly a monumental accomplishment for the softball team and what they were able to do. And it was so much fun to watch. So we're going to hit on that at the very end. But first, we got to talk about some of the talent this Utah football team is bringing in. And what they're trying to do is three-peat as Pac-12 champions. The way you do that is you add more talent. And one of the areas of weaknesses currently on this Utah roster, and weakness is a little bit of a strong word, but I would say just one of the things they needed to improve upon, I felt like, was adding some safety depth because I really like the first three guys: Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki, and Nate Ritchie. But I'll say this: Nate Ritchie, we didn't really get to see him in the spring. He's still trying to get up to speed and work his way back up and everything. And I think he'll be good to go come fall, but it's definitely not a guarantee. So do I feel great about Sione Vaki? Yeah, in the small sample size we saw, but and Cole Bishop's been great for years. So I feel really good about Bishop, Vaki, and still pretty good about Ritchie. But there's definitely some concerns there, especially because you got a guy in Bishop who started 2 years. But outside of that, I mean, Vaki hasn't started a full season. So there's a little bit of unknown to that element. And then when you look at the depth with Clayton Isbell transferring, you get Darian Blue Stewart, who I thought looked really good in spring ball. Jonathan Hall is a freshman coming in. I think he could do some nice things, but it's kind of a safety room. You're just looking and you're like, man, they could kind of use some more guys. And I think the coaches agreed with that because they went out and brought in a former USC Trojan safety who's currently sitting in the portal, and that was Briton Bam Allen. I really like the Bam, kind of the nickname part of it, because I think this dude's a hitter. We're going to talk about that in a second. But 6 foot, 190 overall, and yeah, I think this is a really good get for this team. As I mentioned, just a physical player. And look, he's dealt with some injuries. So he played in 2020 and 2019 in very limited action. And season ending injury caught him all of the 2021 season. And then we didn't see him this previous one as kind of rehabbing and working his way back up to full strength and speed. So what is Utah getting in Briton Bam Allen? Well, they're getting a physical safety. That was the first thing I noticed when I turned on his tape. And if you guys want to watch more of him, make sure you guys head over to Twitter. You can give him a follow. He's got his YouTube page posted up on there. But when you're watching his practice film, one thing is evident very quickly: he loves to hit. And this is also a guy who I think he takes very good angles when he's coming down to take out running backs. If you got a running quarterback too, he's a very strong last line in defense for your defense. And more than likely, he's not going to be the last line in general, just because he's going to be flying in there with such speed that he's going to be able to make some plays behind the line of scrimmage and limit wide receiver screens, all those kinds of things, to just a few yards. He doesn't let receivers block him. I think he does a really good job getting past offensive linemen too, if they're trying to get out in kind of the screen game or the stretch game out on the edge. And he's a guy too, like I said, he hits really hard. He can create turnovers. I mean, he hits that hard. I think he does a good job forcing the ball out too. He's one of those guys who can punch it out or just hit a running back so hard. And he's a guy too, like some safeties will hit a guy and then like the running back will still get a couple extra yards. That's not Allen. I mean, he's going to hit you and you're probably going to just stop as soon as he hits you, because he comes flying in there and he really does hit like a truck. I mean, he is like I said, I just watched him run guys over in the Trojans practice. And that was one of the fun things to watch about that practice, kind of see, him just running over these dudes in practice, because you're not always used to seeing that. I think he does a good job wrapping up too. If it's against a bigger running back, he'll do a good job going low too, taking out their legs to try and bring them down. He also does a really good job recognizing plays, and he has great motor. I mean, he will hustle and fly across the field. And that's one thing, if you want to play on this Utah team, is you got to be willing to hustle. You got to be willing to work hard, play after play. You have to be willing to take on the blocks and do kind of the dirty work things that aren't always just like a flashy interception. And I think Briton Bam Allen, as I said, I think his specialty is his physicality too. I think it's his ability to be an elite run defender there. Look, all we have to go off on is that practice film that I mentioned. But if I had to guess why he didn't play as much at USC based on that, it does seem like his strength right now is more his physicality than his coverage ability. So maybe that's where the Trojans, they just felt like they wanted to roll with other guys. But just because he didn't play at USC doesn't mean he can't play at Utah, I think. And look, you may be concerned about that because of how bad USC's defense was last year, but I look at it more of like, hey, players can thrive in different situations for a variety of reasons. And I really think for Allen working with Morgan Scalley is going to be great. And I think they could really unlock and get the best out of him. And I really think this guy is going to have a chance to play, especially if you're talking short yardage situations, like it's a third or fourth and one, and a QB sneak or just the team is going to run the ball. So I think it could be good to have Allen out there because he can fly off the edge and he's going to take out the running back and he's going to take down the quarterback and like not let them get those extra yards. As I mentioned, he's not a guy who he hits and then the running back or quarterback falls forward for the extra yards. They get hit and they're falling backwards every time because he hits that hard. And that's one of the things I just loved about watching his game overall was that physicality I mentioned. And it's one of the things I like. I feel like he can come right away and he'll play just because he can hit, whether that's on special teams, because I do think he's a guy who's going to want to play since he was, 2019 guy, as we talked about, and then had the COVID and all the other stuff. Like he's got eligibility left to use. And I think he's going to want to use him. I think he's going to be willing to get on the field right away any way necessary. And as I said, special teams just because of the good angles he takes and the strong tackling. But I really think if needed, he could help this defense in some situations just because of his strength and speed, that motor I mentioned, that ability to fly off the field. He also does a pretty good job reading quarterbacks' eyes and just that play recognition, especially from defending the run standpoint. That's just where I think that will translate well to him defending the back end. So, and look, he made some good plays in coverage and practice. I mean, this was still an elite safety. Obviously, anytime you're going Power 5 to a school like USC, you're an elite safety, got some elite talent. So I think Allen is a really good player from what I've seen. I like the size. I said, love the way he hits and plays. So I really think this could be a great get for the Utah football team. I think he's a guy who has a chance to play right away. And I'm excited to see what he can do because I really think that he's going to make some strides in coverage when he gets up and working with the coaches. He's going to be motivated, hungry, and ready to go, especially against that USC when the Utes head out to California to take him on. So I'm excited to see what Allen can do. Safety depth was absolutely a concern. I think when it's all said and done, I think Allen's going to end up being kind of it's kind of weird, right? Because we expect Nate Ritchie to kind of be, it's going to be Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki, I think will be the 1-2. Nate Ritchie will get the extra stuff. After that, Allen, I'm very curious to see. I think that there are some other guys that like Darian Blue Stewart is a guy I think that's probably got the edge on him right now. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if Allen's moving up and ends up as high as fourth on the depth chart because that physicality and more opportunities and to work in coverage and just get coached up. I think he could be a special player. So I'm excited to see what he can do with Morgan Scalley in this defense. And I can just already picture some big hits in Rice Eccles Stadium that just gets the crowd erupting with a big roar. So as I mentioned, I am really looking forward to watching him and hearing about him in practice, asking the coaches about him and just kind of seeing like how's he doing. Cause I think he's a guy who's going to pop because from everything I can tell, it just seems like he really wants it. I think it's a great opportunity for him too, to try to, as we mentioned, didn't play a lot last year. So rehabilitate some of his stock and all those kinds of things. Cause I'm sure his goal eventually is still to play in the NFL and kind of continue chasing his dream playing football. So I think he's got a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity for the Utah football program to get into physical safety like this. So I'm excited to see what Allen can do when he gets up on the hill very soon. And he's not the only player who's transferring in who's going to be getting up to the hill very soon. We're going to talk about Landen King, who officially committed earlier last week in a moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at Built Bars. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. Built. You got to try this. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices but don't want to compromise on taste, then I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing you won't think they're good for you, but you got to try this. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably great flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is they are healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. You can head over to built.com to get your box of Built Bars today, or you can head to your local Smith's or Sam's Club and pick one up too. So once again, built.com, Smith's or Sam's Club. There's no excuse to not give great Built Bars a try. So head over. You guys will not be bummed out, and you can thank me later after you've had some great Built Bars from our friends at Built Bar. Alrighty, jumping back into this one. Utah officially landed Landen King, no pun intended. But so 6'5, 214, the former Auburn tight end, didn't do a lot with the Tigers, but showed some potential. He had a catch in their quadruple overtime game against Alabama, a couple of years ago, where it was not an easy catch, like diving forward, like a lot of guys around him. just one of those catches, like if you're a scrub for lack of a better word, like you don't make that play. So like I think King is a guy he's got a ton of potential. Just turn on the film. You can see it really quickly. He's a big guy. He's a big gamer, made for the moments to me. I think he's someone who's going to flash. And I think working with Fred Whittingham Jr., I think he's going to realize all the potential that led to Auburn recruiting him in the first place. I really think this is going to be a home run for Utah. I think he will play this season. I think he's going to end up being the third tight end. I think it's going to still be Brant Keithy will lead this team receiving yards. Thomas Yasmin will fit somewhere in the top 4 in terms of receiving yards, maybe in top 5. And then I do think Landen King is going to play a role in this offense. I think more than look, Mickey Suguturaga is who we expect to be the blocking tight end. I don't think King is going to be a better blocker than Suguturaga, who I think is just stronger at this moment, but he's undoubtedly a talented pass catcher. And as crazy as it sounds, because I think Thomas Yasmin is incredible, but just watching the potential that King has, I think there is a chance in a world where he does have more receiving yards than Thomas Yasmin. Do I think it's going to happen? Do I think it's even that likely? No, but I just wouldn't fall out of my chair if that happened because, as I said, this guy's got all the potential in the world. I mean, he was a lot higher of a recruit than Keithy or Yasmin were. Obviously, this is an incredible athlete, big catch radius, pretty good route runner too. I just think with some more opportunities, I think he's really going to pop. And I think, like I said, I think third tight end this year, but I'm looking as soon as next year. I think he could be Utah's leading tight end because I think he is ready for a huge breakout season. I think he's going to feast in this offense. It just might take him a year to get under it. So, I'm not expecting him to go for more than 400 yards, but I think there's a chance he could even somehow get over 300. And that it seems crazy when it comes out of my mouth, but I just look at the talents that the player has, and I'm just like, I can see it. He's a talented mismatch guy, can go out there and make plays just like he did in the SEC. Did he make a ton of them? No, but look at the moments and some of the situations like I just talked about. For him to step up and be able to do that, am I going to be like, oh, he's going to go against USC? I'm not sure if he can compete with the Trojans. No, he was making plays against Alabama defensive backs. Alabama puts defensive backs into the NFL like every single season. USC does not do that, as we know. USC DBs can't tackle, as we've watched in the past. But so, like I said, I am just, or safeties, whoever's going to be matched up with King. I think they're going to need to be defensive backs like safeties, all that, because of what a special pass catcher is overall. So I'm very excited about him. This one seems very likely. I think it's a great move for King to come into this offense that is so tight end friendly, work with the best tight ends coach in the country, in my opinion, Fred Whittingham Jr., learn from Brant Keithy too, one of the most accomplished college football tight ends, not just Utah tight ends, but college football tight ends we've seen over the past few seasons, and one of the most accomplished in Utah history, obviously. I mean, he looked incredible that Florida game. So if we get that version of Brant Keithy back, which look, I know outside of the recovery and the injuries, I just think over time, I think he's going to be healthy and ready to go and making some big time plays for this team that I'm excited to see what this three-headed monster can do, because I really think Yasmin, Keithy, and as I blank on King's name, even though I've just been talking about him for the past 5 minutes, but and then you look at what King can do too. I think this is a special group, and I'm fired up to see what Fred Whittingham can do with them. And as I said, this is a signing too in King, and it's the same thing with Allen too. We're like, can they contribute in their first year? Yes. But long term, I think is where we could see even more from them, and they could be valuable pieces for this team. So it's going to be something fun to monitor, but very well could participate and make some plays right away. So it's just going to be something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on. And speaking of the future, Utah picked up a commitment from a 2024 safety in modern days, Jelongi Davis. And when you're talking about Davis, 6'1", 185, look, modern day is been one of the best high school football programs for a long time now. So anytime you can play and do some things, that's special. And I think he's going to have a chance to take an even bigger role with them this season. But he's a three-star prospect. His 2023 stats go as follow: 37 tackles, 3 receptions, and 2 pass breakups overall. 6'1", 185. And he is, once again, playing against some of the best competition, some of the recent modern day quarterbacks. Matt Leinert's son actually goes to modern day, just for example, but they had Bryce Young goes there. And I believe the top 2025, actually, I called their game last fall. That's what I'm trying to remember it. I had a high school thing with the KSL Sports, but they had the top, and that was almost 10 months ago now. So that's why I'm blanking on it. But they had the top quarterback who was awarded Max Prep's MVP for the class of 2025 there too. And there's some other lineage of guys that I'm sure I'll be kicking myself when I look up later. But there's some great quarterbacks and players have come through modern day, and the teams they play, St. John Bostic, best competition in the country. So if you can play there, it's kind of like when you hear guys that played in Texas, like Allen, any of those things. my interest immediately perks up because I'm like, oh, this guy's played against the best, and he's obviously made plays because he's getting recruited. Like that excites me. I'm not worried about like, well, can he play against elite competition? Because he's pretty much going against Division I talent every single week. So that's where I'm really excited. Some of the things for Davis that really popped for me when I turn on the film, I think he does a great job reading quarterback's eyes, got really good hands, quick reactions. He's really speedy, fast, good hips. I said played against the best, like I talked about. I really love his speed. I just think he closes on those balls very quickly. Just the ability to read and react to what's going on, especially dropping into coverage, good footwork as well, doesn't get tripped over himself. A good athlete, kind of guy who can pick off a pass and take it back for 6 because of that speed and the shiftiness he has to be able to evade some of those tackles too, because he is such a strong athlete. And he's also a pretty good tackler too. I think he makes a nice line of defense. I talked about with Allen, right? Like he's a good line of defense, but he more so just flies up and makes the plays in the front seven. This is Davis is more of your last line of defense because he's focused on his first priority is making sure nothing gets behind him, which he does a very good job of. And then if the linebackers or D line, whoever's missing the tackle, and it's up to Davis to make a play, I trust him to make the play. He does a really good job wrapping up too, and takes good angles when he goes in for tackles. That's one of the things I think that could aid him early on as a special teams guy. He did play special teams for Modern Day, and you can see him flying in on kickoff coverage, throwing blockers out of the way, and making tackles to get the whole stadium fired up on his feet. He also plays with a good motor, and as I said, really good in coverage too, not just like playing on the back end at safety, but I think he can come down. He can check tight ends, he can check receivers because he's got those quick hips, good feet too. He's going to be able to stay with guys. And he's a good athlete, as I mentioned, and that just doesn't equate to speed. He's got bounce. Like he can go up top, high point passes too. So this is a guy I'm really high on. I think that this is a really good pickup. It didn't take long for me to turn on the tape to fall in love with this guy. I think that he is going to be a beast for this Utah defense eventually. And I think he's got a chance to play. I know it seems like, look, Utah's bringing in a lot of talent. And I'm not saying this guy is going to be a beast like as soon as he rolls in 2024, but I do think this is like a depth piece. Tuck away, let him develop, all those kind of things. And I think this is a guy who's going to be a player at the next level just based on what I've seen early on. And I'm excited to see the strides he makes this coming season too, because as I'm recording and talk about this, he's probably in the lab right now, getting work in, doing all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, I'm really fired up about Jelongi Davis, and I think this is going to be a dude in the 2024 class. And I know we love to get enamored with the high 4 stars and everything, but the reason Utah football became back-to-back Pac-12 champions, well, the Clark Phillips and Lander Bartons of the world, the high recruits have helped. It's also because of the Devin Lloyds, the Brant Keithys, the lower recruits, and also the quality transfers, right? The Cam Risings, Jaquindon Jacksons, who were able to kind of develop with the program, improve their talents and skills, and help this team win. So just because we're getting all these high recruits, don't discount the fact that it's still a lot of these under the radar guys where you really got to do your stuff and find the hidden gems. And this is something Utah football has done such a great job of. So once again, excited to see Davis for the long term. I think King and Allen, as I said, could make an immediate impact, and then really expect them in those two in 2024 to be really involved. And then I think in the 2025 to like 2026 season, which I know seems like it's really far off, but that's just when I kind of think that we're going to be able to see Davis really step in and make some plays for this team. So once again, Jelongi Davis, tuck that name away because I do think you'll be remembering and thinking about it when he's making big plays inside Rice-Eccles Stadium come a long away fall, basically, overall. So that's going to do it for Utah football news, but we got to talk about Utah softball a little bit because they won the Pac-12 championship tournament. So now they became the 6th Utes overall to win a Pac-12 championship or like a major tournament. If you want to include regular seasons too, Utah wins basketball, fits the marking there, obviously. But overall 6 like conference tournaments, championships, or just like for ski, we'll just conclude the national tournament in that championship because the Pac-12 doesn't really have the skiing overall. But either way, huge accomplishment for Utah softball. And they were ranked 15th currently, and they claimed the first ever Pac-12 softball tournament championship on Sunday evening. They downed the number 2 Bruins 7-4 to capture the program's first Pac-12 championship since the Utes joined the conference in 2012. Mariah Lopez was named the tournament MVP. Hallie Morris made some huge plays. There was a slew of other members of the Utah softball team that really stepped up, but huge credit to Amy Hogan and her squad for getting this done. Overall, this is Utah's 10th conference tournament championship and their first since they won the Mountain West Conference tournament in 2006. So it's been a long time coming, and that's, it was that way with Utah football too, right? You see the slow rise and the kind of the build of a program up. and it's been really fun to watch and monitor. I kind of got one of my first the games I ever called was doing Utah softball games, and that was something a really fun, a really cool experience. Getting to talk with Coach Hogue, and Hallie Morris was on the team at that time. There were a couple other of the key girls on this squad that I got a chance to call. Last year they weren't great, obviously. In fact, Weber State, Weber State was very good in softball last year for the Big Sky, and they earned a 3 seed in the NCAA regionals. Like, they had an unbelievable regular season, arguably the best we've ever seen from a Big Sky team. But Big Sky, Pac-12, there's a difference. They went into Utah's house in a game Utah needed last year, and Weber State won that game. So that just kind of shows you the difference in the seasons overall. And now Utah was able to go in the Pac-12 tournament, and instead of being upset like they were last year, they're the ones upsetting a team like UCLA. So special and magical to see this team go on that kind of a run. And now, as the 15th seed, they're gonna start the national postseason by taking on the Southern Illinois on Friday at Dumke Family Softball Stadium, where the Utes play up on the hill. That's going to be at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So make sure you guys head over to check out that game. It'd be great to have an awesome atmosphere for it. And this team deserves your support. Once again, a Pac-12 champions that makes huge plays. Morris had that monster home run, what Mariah Lopez has done, and I could go down and long on the roster just because there are so many talented playmakers for this team. But they're overall 37-13, and they were 15-9 in conference in the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 is no slouches when it comes to softball. It's one of the conferences again. So once again, just shout out to Utah softball, and it's just really cool to see just the position that Utah athletics is in right now, where we have another program and another team winning a conference championship. Michelle Bodkin of KSL Sports is actually going to be joining me on Wednesday of this week to discuss. So Wednesday's show, we'll have that out, just talking about overall what is leading to so much success in Utah athletics, something I talked about a little bit more in the past. But I think when you're winning 6 Pac-12 championships, we talked about lacrosse and the success they're having last week. Women's basketball, football, gymnastics. There's a lot of success going on right now. I want to dive into that a little bit deeper, talk about some of the common trends and the things we're seeing in there that allow Utah to enjoy this success. So that's going to come later in the week. On tomorrow's show, I will be back solo once again. I'm going to talk about FanDuel. They released their official win total projections, bets, all that for where Utah is. I'm going to revisit kind of some of my schedule predictions, look over things, see if I feel the rankings and where they have us in terms of wins are fair. So that's going to be on tomorrow's show. But once again, shout out to Utah softball, and shout out to all of you for listening to the very end. We thank you very much for that. Once again, like and subscribe. This is your first time, and join us tomorrow on Locked On Utes.